We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
The 1-2 pitch, ball lined to Yount, it's short, he throws, it's over! The Brewers have won the American League pennant! Milwaukee, you have a World Series!
Hit in the air, Yount makes a great catch, and Juan Nieves has thrown the first no-hitter in Milwaukee Brewer history!
Swings, and there it is! A base hit in the right center! He's done it! 3,000 for Robin.
And there's a drive in the left field. This is hit well. And it's gone! Ryan Braun! A two-run home run! The Brewers take the lead!
Morgan, a smash up the middle. Base hit to center. Here comes Gomez. Around third. A throw and the Brewers win. The Brewers are moving on a base hit by Nyjer Morgan. Here it is. Yelich sends one to right center and deep. Get up. Get up. Get out of here and gone for Yelich.
You're cruising for a bruising with me, Andrew Snyder.
And me, Adam McGee.
As we talk all things Milwaukee Brewers for the Eurostep Podcast Network and Blue Wire Podcast. Well, Adam, they did it. The Milwaukee Brewers sent the Tampa Bay Rays back down to that absolute hell hole in St. Petersburg, Florida, they call Tropicana Field, taking final two games of the series to win the series. It was a 3-game set, lost the opener, won the next two. Happy bus ride flight down to Chicago to face Craig Counsell and the Cubs. We're going to talk about all of that, all of the ins and outs and the decisions and the poll reporting. But before we do that, how you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. The Brewers are back to winning ways. This was quite a series. We do have a lot to talk about, as if we didn't kind of have enough of kind of having to talk umpires in the last episode. This crew really wanted to make sure that, it would be impossible to podcast out the series from any side without talking umpires. But yeah, most importantly, Brew Crew back to winning ways. A big and an impressive debut series for one of the organization's hottest prospects. All sets up quite nicely going into the reunion with a certain Mr. Counsell.
Yes, it does, Adam. 19-11 is the record, if I remember correctly. Brewers in first place. I think the Cubs will finish off their series with the Mets tonight. If that's a 3-gamer, if it's a 4-gamer, they might have another tomorrow, but I haven't checked that out. We'll start with one of the things that you mentioned, and then we'll get to some injury updates that Sophia provided on the broadcast today. But the first one I think that we need to talk about is the Brewers calling up Tyler Black, Owen Miller option to Nashville. When we were talking about what we thought the corresponding move would be, I think the consensus was it would probably see Oliver Dunn go to Nashville to get regular playing time down there as he was in a bad slump. Had a good game today, though. We'll talk about that a little later. But it was Owen Miller going back down to Nashville. And even though he pitched recently in a baseball game, Adam, somehow I had forgotten that he was even on the active roster. And I think that just goes to show when you have two guys that look identical on the roster, in your mind, you just combine them as one person. And that's what we did with Owen Miller and Oliver Dunn. But it is Miller back to Nashville, and Tyler Black steps in, has a good debut, which we'll talk about. Other moves to get him on the 40-man. Wade Miley was moved to the 60-day IL, which was obviously a move that we knew was coming. A number 4 prospect in the Brewers system and number 46 in baseball, according to MLB Pipeline. He had a 919 OPS with AAA Nashville. Obviously, the one question with him coming in was, where does he play defensively? It seems they completely abandoned trying to make him a third baseman, getting most of his time in Nashville at first base or DH. Played first base for the Brewers in this series and also stepped in for an injured Gary Sanchez at DH. Thrilled to see him already up and making an impact. This is a guy, obviously, that we expect to have or expect to be like a contact OBP type of hitter and draw a lot of walks and have a little bit of pop as well. Thrilled to see him up, and even though there's like no clear kind of spot for him on the roster, as they've now effectively got 3 first basemen. Jake Bauers got some time in left field today to give Black the opportunity to play first base. All in all, I think this is a situation where the Brewers said, this is a guy who's ready now, and he can hit and he can help us. Put him on the roster and see what happens. And was pleased to see it, even if I was a little bit surprised. I thought maybe a little bit later down the line we might see him back up, like maybe mid-May, but happy that he's starting May with the Brewers.
Yeah, for sure. Very exciting to get Tyler Black in the mix. I do think some of the moves that you've outlined there, some of the decisions involved have been interesting. I guess, for example, with Black in the mix, Jake Bauer still being a factor too, and being someone who it seems like we're going to see play some outfield. We'll monitor and track that, I guess, and discuss how we feel about that as we continue to see more of it. But I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right. Doesn't feel great. You're with me on that, yeah?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He looked fine out there. So it's not
He did.
necessarily the defense.
No, it's not. It's just
no,
like,
my thing is like, why are we working to get his bat into the lineup if we're shuffling things around? Like that doesn't really make sense for me.
well, I mean, also, what happens if he's still hitting well when Yelly is ready to come back too? I mean, the logical thing would have been
DFA conversation.
Joey Weimer being optioned, but yeah, I don't know. Weimer actually made some nice plays this series, but that's where it will get weird. It's like if Tyler Black is playing well, and then you're like, well, what's the point of Jake Bauers? The point of Jake Bauers is that he sure can't scoop a ball at first base. But other than that, it's kind of limited. And if you're gonna have Tyler Black and you're gonna have Hoskins, because even with Black, like at the moment, you could say, oh yeah, he'll play some DH. Yeah, that's because Yelly's injured. You can say things like that. When Yelly's back, that will go away. You've already got Contreras and Sanchez, who we'll talk some more about in a moment, and hopefully that's not out of the equation for too long. And Rhys Hoskins in that kind of rotation of guys that you want to give opportunity to at DH. So it is like, it's interesting that they have completely moved away from the third base element of it. And that might become even more interesting if Tyler Black continues to hit really well and all those other guys get healthy, and then you're just trying to work out how do we get all these bats into our lineup.
And it's funny, we were talking about this in the Discord during the game today, because with his athleticism, guys like Keith Law have long speculated that he could be like a perfectly serviceable and even good like corner outfielder. And I know when he got hurt a few years ago, I think he came on a play when he was playing center field. But obviously, for the last few years, the Brewers have had just like an assortment of outfield talents clogging those positions as he's coming up the ranks. So you try and find another position for him. Yeah, what the long-term or even medium-term prognosis for Gary Sanchez's hamstring will factor into that. Eric Haas was in the clubhouse today, but I don't think they had put him on the active roster just yet.
They did not.
So So maybe we're going to have Sanchez to the IL ahead of uh, the Cub series, and then Haas becomes, for the time being, more of a pure backup catcher, and Tyler Black just eats up DH at Pats. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I would think while he's here and while you don't have Yelly and you don't have to make the decision on who you're flipping back to Nashville, and now that you say it, yeah, they're definitely not going to DFA Jake Bauer, so they're going to flip Weimer when Yelich comes back because you're going to do it with the guy that has the options. As we see if the 40% ish strikeout rate eventually ever goes down. Holding out hope every day, Adam, lighting candles and all that. But yeah, for the time being, I think just if Gary Sanchez is going to miss 2 weeks, throw Tyler Black in there and let him hit and see what happens. Because obviously with today, we saw that good things can happen. And maybe, like, even if he does struggle at some point and you have to send him back down, I think what we're seeing a lot in baseball with rookies coming up is it's almost like they need to get to that point where they fail somewhere and adjust from there. Bryce Terang had a really tough rookie season, comes back strong this year. Joey Ortiz had a really tough short stint with the Orioles last year, comes back this year, looks like a different player. Oliver Dunn's going through a bit of that right now. Obviously, this is a guy that we remember, I think, didn't spend any time in AAA because of kind of the injuries that piled up during his minor league career with the Yankees and the Phillies, if I'm remembering that. So, yeah, I think for the time being, it won't be as hard to find him at bats, but it could become a conversation when Yelich is back and Gary Sanchez is healthy. And then we're asking, like, okay, do we need to have a hard discussion about whether or not we need 3 first basemen on this roster,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was mentioned or kind of discussed on the broadcast in regard to Terang, how you can see him benefiting from the year of struggling in the big leagues, as opposed to if he was kind of being thrown back and forward. And you mentioned this to me privately. It might have actually been before the last series finished up, but your sense of you don't think there's been as big a gap for whatever reason, possibly COVID related or whatever it might be, between that jump, whether you're jumping from double A, triple A up to the big leagues. And I mean, even with the very top prospects, obviously we're seeing something with Jackson Churio. You just have to look at kind of the way the Orioles have been very proactive, I think, in having no fear in calling guys up, and then also just being like, yeah, you're going back down for a while. But Terang is kind of interesting as the Brewer case study, although I guess Weimer was up as long as him and hasn't quite figured it out. That's always going to be part of it. But he looks like a different player this year. And you do wonder just how much, well, continuing to see big league starting pitchers, over and over, absolutely electric relievers, the kind of which you're not necessarily always going to be dealing with in the minors, eventually just kind of, helps you to crack something. And I know he made plenty of adjustments over the off season. I know he changed his bat, as they were talking a little bit about on the broadcast today, but it does feel like the Brewers are rewarded for just kind of getting Terang the reps, getting him comfortable. And at the start of his second season, he actually looks like someone who's much more experienced than that and has been hitting really well as a result. I don't know. Do you want to go into more just on because I did think that was interesting when you pointed that out. And there is a lot of evidence all around baseball of that adjustment, that jump is possibly harder for guys to make than it always has been. Like there's something that's just a little bit different at the moment.
Yeah, I think it was an Eno Saris Derek Van Riper discussion on rates and barrels that kind of put this in my mind. And I think part of it is, like you said, the COVID stuff and just some guys missing a certain amount of developmental game time, whether that be in high school, in college, or in the minor leagues, whatever it may have been. Also, I think something that we can talk about is impacting like the difference between playing a baseball game in AAA or AA and in the big leagues. I mean, you look at just kind of the ways that they're experimenting in the minor leagues. I mean, you had the tackified ball in AA for half the season last year, the challenge system, the automated balls and strike system. And so I guess that adjustment for some guys can probably be a little bit tougher when you take that big jump to the next level. I don't know what the actual root cause is. I do want to say, and you put this in my mind, it wasn't on another podcast, that I think Tyler Black is kind of a guy that I feel like will not fail at the big league level initially, and a guy I expect to hit the ground running because the two skills that jump out the most, and now obviously now we're seeing we've got to see it in person. Some of the athleticism and speed and hustle is pretty great as well, but the contact and the patience, so that at the very least he's going to have some sort of like sustainable OBP that's going to keep him in the lineup if they find time for him because he's getting on base. And maybe in the minors, obviously last year he was a big time stolen base guy, so add that to the mix with Terang and Chorio when he gets on and things like that, so he can change the game that way. So I'm not going to say it's slump proof, but it's like I feel like there's going to be a floor there if he gets like a significant amount of runway to see what he's done. I mean, obviously, famous last words, because I believed Oliver Dunn was going to hit the ground running, and then that strikeout rate just made everything unsustainable.
What I'd give you as a counter, and I hope I'm not right on this, but is a lot of what you outlined there for Tyler Black are the same things you were saying when Sal Frelick was called up. And
Yeah.
Sal has had his own difficulties in spite of, just being an incredibly reliable hitter. Someone who made great contact, someone who was patient in his approach in the minor leagues. He has found it tougher in the big leagues. It hasn't all been bad by any means. Like, Sal has done plenty of good, and it looks like he belongs if he still has some stuff to work out. But yeah, look, it's interesting. I mean, it's a fun kind of strand running through the Brewers right now. We've obviously been talking about this as one of the things that really excited us about this season. From honestly the second last season ended, that we would have so many rookies, so many second year players, and you're trying to kind of just have a feel for, well, what is the right development track for all of these guys? And then you drill down and it becomes, well, what's right for that guy? And it isn't going to be right for this guy. And being able to follow all of that, monitor all of that, it's kind of, the Brewers are, much like the Orioles are, much like a few other franchises, they're a kind of interesting kind of, I don't know, test pool for a lot of the changes that have happened around baseball, and having real high quality talent, really highly thought of talent come up and try to make it work. I mean, ultimately, the Brewers are a very good team, which is worth us kind of noting in amongst the struggles. Like, these guys are generally getting to contribute to a very competitive team in spite of their own kind of individual ups and downs. And maybe it is just like we're saying with Bryce, that over time that rubs off, you work it out, and it's like, yeah, okay, I'm here, I'm good, and I'm a kind of dependable big league player. We'll talk some more about Black, though. That was kind of I guess, a pretty significant intro to him, but we will have reason to go into some specifics shortly.
Yeah, we will. So I'll just throw in a few other things that I heard on the broadcast today, before we get into the recaps and get to talk about, a lot of fun stuff. But one thing Sophia mentioned today was that Yelly started swinging a bat. So obviously we know that the progress has been slow on the recovery with the back issue, but seems to be trending much better. She also mentioned DL Hall, and his rehab is progressing well. Expected to throw a bullpen on Friday, and then if that goes well, again Tuesday. After that, live BPs if all goes to plan. And a little note that she dropped in the end, it said that he's seeing the velo tip back up as he I guess throws. So something really important to watch, as every week the Brewers rotation becomes a different puzzle that you have to fit a piece into, especially, when guys get suspended for no reason.
I don't know if it was Rock just wildly speculating, which seems probably likely. But on the subject of Gary Sanchez, he did kind of phrase it in an interesting way, but seemed to suggest that, there might be hope that it's just a 1 or 2 days off, and maybe the off day combined with today, and he's good to go, and he doesn't have to go on the IL. I mean, he'd had the MRI at the time of Murph's press conference yesterday, although Murph didn't know the results. Those results would long be known by now, and I would have thought we would have seen a corresponding roster move today, particularly given the squeeze they're in, and just to play it safe at catcher, if they felt, okay, there's, a very clear and definitive he is out for X amount of time. So, maybe Rock actually heard something and he was feeding us a tidbit, and Gary Sanchez will be back in the mix for the Cubs series.
Well, no, that'd be good to know. Sorry to Eric Haas if you don't get to join the squad, but at least he got to eat a big league post game spread today, probably though, so that's good.
I mean, it's not like he's never had those before, so maybe it's not quite the same for
he's
him
had
as
his
some other
moments.
guys. But
That's true.
just it could be something to monitor. Maybe Rock's just got like just like some sort of catcher's guild, and he's got the inside track.
Maybe it's like they can see what each other's thinking too. And like he's like,
Maybe.
uh, I don't want to speculate, but I just did. Um, and you may have had this too, but I had to go in and out of like having volume on during the broadcast today. Did they speculate on who the emergency catcher was?
No, they just thought, oh, it'd be interesting if we find out, kind of thing. That's all I heard about it.
I had a theory, and I said Sal Frelick because the hockey background, a little like a puck to the collarbone's not going to cause him any issues, like just like a foul tip, like maybe
Hasn't that
Ollie
come up?
Dunn. I don't know.
Didn't that come up before? Didn't Murph mention something about Sal in that capacity? Maybe in spring training.
That sounds right. I know Logan in the Discord of speculation was Owen Miller before Owen Miller, obviously not with the team right now.
What about Jake Bowers? I mean, we've seen his ability to scoop. That seems like, maybe not everything's getting past him on the ground. That could be a good start.
Left-handed emergency catcher would be sick. That would
That
be
would
so
be
sick.
sick.
Uh, oh man. No, I don't want it to happen because if it happened, it means something bad happened to Bill. Maybe I could handle an ejection, but I don't want an injury to get
Yeah.
there.
I mean, if
Um,
if if the Brewers are like 8-1 up, and I don't know, Bill flips off Council at the top of the ninth and gets ejected, and we get to see who the emergency catcher is. I mean, that's a fun outcome. Although,
yeah, I would
dude,
be on board.
we may not need more suspensions. It's just let me just get ahead. We'll get that later, but suspensions may not be something that the Brewers need a whole bunch of while they work through some others.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Playoff time is your time to join the Prize Picks community of over 5 million members who have already downloaded the app. You can make your first $10 deposit and receive an instant $10 bonus. If you have the skills, you can play for a shot at turning that $10 into $1,000. Star players mean more on Prize Picks. Keep an eye out for starred players on the board, and you could receive a 10% payout boost if they're in your winning lineup. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the playoff basketball board and selecting Joker and Luka to each have more than 50 points, rebounds, and assists combined as they dominate the playoffs. And I can't wait to have Caitlin Clark's three-pointers made stat in my lineup when the women's basketball season tips off in May. Download the app today and use code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks.
Going on to the series at hand, Rays against the Brewers, and oh boy, was it exciting. Ryan Pepio versus Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson continuing to get stretched out, and this was by far his best start as a Brewer thus far. But it didn't seem like it was going to start out that way, Adam. It started out pretty stressfully in the first inning. Starts it off with a walk to, or he hits Yandy Diaz, then walks Richie Palacios. Randy Arozarena draws a walk. Bases are loaded with no outs. Induces a double play ball from Isaac Paredes, and then strikes out Austin Shenton to get out of the inning, just down 1-0. From there, Bryce Wilson would pitch great and go 6 innings. Even in my most optimistic view of what I thought Bryce Wilson could do as a starter for this team in this period where they need him, he kind of went above and beyond that. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, just the 1 run in the first inning on the double play, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, up to 91 pitches, giving the Brewers some length when they often and always need it, especially they could have saved using a few guys in game 2 of this series, but we'll get to that in a minute. Great outing from Bryce Wilson. The only reason he doesn't walk away a winner is because the guy on the mound for the other team absolutely dealt Ryan Pepiot. 6 shutouts, just 2 hits, 7 strikeouts. Pepiot was acquired by the Rays in the Tyler Glasnow trade from the Los Angeles Dodgers in the offseason. Pepiot was a guy who I think when us and the listeners would discuss trade packages from the Dodgers, he was always like the second or third guy we mentioned on that list of guys we were intrigued to get. I think Michael Bush and the Gavin Stones and the Emmett Sheehan's of the world stood out more in our mind. I know it's just one time of me seeing him throw baseballs on a TV screen, but I was pretty convinced by Pepiot. I know earlier in his career in the minors, he had issues with walks and really cleaned up his command at the big league level last year, and that looks like it's continued on to this year. And the Rays might have got themselves a dude in having to cut ties with Tyler Glasnow because of the realities of their financial situation, but didn't really want Pepiot to have it on this day. Wish he just would have kind of screwed off.
Yeah, first of all, on Bryce Wilson, doing you proud. You must feel proud, Durham's own. What a family. That's first and foremost. Obviously,
yes,
we're fresh off the back of his brother Peyton being drafted with the 98th pick. So in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, he is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. So just look, big times. I don't know. It's certainly not something I've seen a whole lot of Brewers do in the past 2 years that I've been watching, to just be able to scale up and down the workload as effortlessly as it seems Bryce has done. Like the fact that he has now got to a point where he can throw 91 pitches, he can give you 6 innings, and he can give you 6 really strong innings. That is just unbelievably impressive. Like, you see how difficult so many other guys find to adjust their workload at all as a reliever. So we have seen him at times be a single inning guy. More often than not, we've seen him give multiple innings. But I think to get to a place where he's pitching as well as he pitched against the Rays, throwing 91 pitches, like, the Brewers just desperately needed someone to step up and help them out in that way. So to get a start like this out of him is really, really something special. And it's just a pity that they couldn't get it done otherwise and really give him some runs while he was out there, because it feels like something that you want to cash in on. Having said that, Andrew, I don't see a whole lot of reason to believe that Bryce Wilson can't back this up and, give us some more starts like this for however long it's needed. And we talked about it in the last episode, but when Murph was asked recently, he's like, yeah, I'm kind of seeing him as a starter now. That's how my thinking has evolved. That's obviously what the situation requires, but also I think Bryce's pitching is, meeting that kind of high bar that you'd want him to hit to get into that conversation. And there have been some struggles this year early on too. The fact the ERA is down to 3 now as well, that's just really good stuff all around. So massive shout out to Bryce Wilson. Pride of Durham.
This is, I think, for the most part, kind of a Owen Miller situation as well, where like Fredonia versus Mequon, because Bryce and Peyton both went to Orange High School in Hillsborough, North Carolina. So I think that both areas would claim them.
I saw
everything.
Peyton is down as born in Hillsborough, so I don't know. Did they move between Bryce being born and Peyton being born from Durham to Hillsborough? Who could say? I don't know.
Very similar upbringing to me. I was born at Durham Regional Hospital. We lived in Cedar Grove, North Carolina, then Hillsborough, North Carolina, then Eflin, North Carolina. So just we walked the same ground, and
you and your brother are also both in Major League Baseball and the National Football League now.
I wish we could have gotten that piece of the puzzle connecting us as well. But yeah, like, anytime you get on Facebook and you're connected with like some like old friend of my dad's that lives in the area, they're just always so proud. Anytime there's a link that they can post about Peyton or Bryce just doing a great job with their athletic achievements. Supposed to be great guys too, so you love to see it. You love to see it, Adam. Should we get to things you don't love to see, Adam?
Let's do that.
As we mentioned, dominant performance from Ryan Pepio that get good relief from Sean Armstrong, and is it Kevin Kelly as well? Brewers got some good pitching from Brian Hudson, who threw a scoreless eighth, and Trevor McGill, who threw a scoreless ninth. Hudson also got seventh. So Brian Hudson, excuse me, not to shout out another podcast, but Kurt Hogan, J.R. Radcliffe's podcast, Microbrew. The last episode, Brian Hudson was interviewed at the end and talked a little bit about how in spring training the idea of this multi-inning weapon role was like brought to him, and just seems very thankful for the opportunity because he knew he was in a loaded Dodgers system where he wasn't going to get opportunity, and now he's taking it and running with it. Jason Adam on to pitch for the Rays in the ninth. Jason Adam, a man I detest to no end. I just hate this man. If he's ever on a rehab assignment in Durham, I'm going to go and just boo him relentlessly. Salfrey looked doubles to start the inning after a William Contreras line out to right. Willie Adames draws a walk. The Adames line out was just like bad luck too. Like it was an Adam ball, as they call it, like where he hit it right at him because he smoked that the opposite way. And if that finds grass, it's a tie game. Willie Adames steals second, so runners on second and third with one out. Jake Bauers to the plate. Back foot, I don't know, breaking ball. I've lost track of what even kind of pitch it was. Jake Bauers swings through the pitch. It's a strikeout, drop third strike. The ball gets through the catcher, Renee Pinto, I believe. Bauers backswing clonks, for lack of a better term.
That is too strong a term. That is too strong a term for what happens. Grazes?
Love taps, like a little gentle, like a tap. Taps the back or the helmet of Pinto. The umps call the play dead. Bauers is out because it's a strike three, and the runners remain at their bases. Salfrey had been coming home to score. Pinto, we should say, was leaning towards the ball, towards Bauers. So I wonder if the natural backswing that Bauers had would not have hit Pinto had he not been doing that. And the Brewers are unable to score after that. The game ends. Brewers lose 1-0. And for the second straight game, we have to go to a pull report from the umpires explaining their situation. Pat Murphy's ejected in the midst of all that, getting his money's worth, arguing the call. And a situation where I think they applied the rule the way it's written correctly, but it's really, really dumb because the ball was through Pinto by the time Bauers made contact with him. It didn't impact the play at all. And then, like you pointed out last week, we have no way for our centralized replay center to step in here and do anything about this and apply common sense to a play where the Rays got away with one because of just like there was no way out of that situation based on the way the rule is written. Bauers, to his credit, was like, yeah, if I didn't swing at a ball at my back foot, none of this would have been an issue, basically. But really, really crappy way to lose a game when it looked like you were about to claw your way back.
Yeah, Bauer's specific quote answers your question as to what type of pitch it was. It was, if I don't swing at a slider that bounced in the grass, we're not in that situation. Will I read through? I mean, this is probably not the last time we're going to do this either in this episode. Will I read through crew chief Chris Guccione's explanation for the situation? This is from Kurt Hogue shared this. Ryan had the plate. In this situation, it was swinging strike three. The ball got away from the catcher, but on the batter's backswing, hit the catcher in the helmet. At that point, once the play is over, the ball is then dead, because in that case, the catcher still has an opportunity to make a play on the ball if the guy was stealing or if he had been there and gotten the guy out at the plate. So we leave the ball in play until everything is done. And then at that point, you have to enforce the backswing interference. So in this case, it was a third strike to Bowers, and all runners go back to the original base at the time of the pitch. That's the rules. In the official baseball rules, it's 6, 03, A3, and 4. I think the problem here, and it is going back to the conversation we had on the last episode, and it will continue into this one, is officials really across all sports have just come to detest the notion that common sense could factor into things because it requires a judgment call. And I think they just like to not have the, I guess, the accountability that would come with having to regularly make judgment calls. And honestly, judgment calls, if they were if they were being reviewed centrally, and again, my only point on this is when an incident like this happens, there's so much kerfuffle on the field that the time is just there built in that someone should be looking at it. It's like if the game is stopping because the decision is that contentious, you can have enough guys looking at a screen to make the call centrally and be like, well, actually, here's what happened on this. In this case, I think this is a very letter of the law decision, and I think it is close to correct. The problem is the catcher leaning in. The catcher leans in notably, and that's just not accounted for in any part of this. And I mean, that's not just with this specific player with instances that are quite as extreme as this. It's an ongoing thing you see with catcher's interference calls now. And that's again, the problem there is how do you call that? How do you get that right? Well, it would require more of a judgment call for the officials. So I think they lean on one way or another, which is the part of the rule that is just easier for them to enforce, which is to say it was catcher's interference. Because how much a catcher has leaned in is one, I've no doubt tougher to gauge in the moment. You're standing behind home plate. But two is it's less palatable in a review sense if that's what it was to come to and you're trying to draw a line of, well, at what point have you leaned too far in? At what point is the lean more than the back coming back? But this was really like the contact was so late, so incidental. The ball had already shot way out through his legs that I think a very significant lean in to try and get it where you've missed the ball. And then it's only after that, really, the Bowers back comes back and lands in a place where, the catcher's head wouldn't have been if the pitch wasn't so low and if he was trying to scramble to keep it in front of him.
And I think the optics of it make it look sillier when you think of catcher's interference as it relates to it. Because, okay, it's the beginning of Bauer's swing and the catcher reaches and he hits it as he's swinging. Okay, the onus on the catcher to, for lack of a better term, stay in his lane in that situation. But because it's at the end of the swing, it doesn't matter. It's just kind of weird. But like you said, I mean, Brewers don't get shut out and you win the game. You face some really good pitching. And for me, like, I wasn't as up in arms as I was about the Aaron Judge call, and something we'll talk about very quickly. But it's just like when these things happen in quick succession, and then you get an instance of today on video or audio, an umpire is caught yelling at Byron Buxton to get off the field as he's kind of gingerly walking off the field. Byron Buxton, a guy that we know has a ton of injuries in his history and may very well have hurt something again. We'll find out later. And it's just like, these guys have lost the plot. I'm not at this baseball game to see Chris Guccione. I promise you I'm not. Chris Guccione's mom doesn't care about seeing him out on the field. Like, we come to see the players. We had the Aaron Boone situation a few weeks ago. When that umpire was like, I don't care who said it, you're the manager, you got to go. I apply that same logic to the umpire telling Buxton to get off the field. If we find out later that it was actually a fan, I think we should still suspend the umpire because that's that umpire's field and he's responsible for what's said on there.
Like that Aaron Boone one was so ridiculous though that when we get to game 2 and obviously the situation really escalating there, and I think just like the most livid I have seen AmFam fans in the 2+ years we've been doing this now. Like the broadcast crew are worried about people getting ejected because of the fans now. Like
Oh,
they're actively like is that a precedent that we are going to see? Where it's like, hey, you're responsible. I mean, we did see, I guess, a manager punished for something in terms of being responsible for something that isn't necessarily within their control. Which again we'll get to, but just it's it's very strange. And look, we said on the last pod, like it's just this is not what we make. It's not what we set out to do here. It never has been over the whatever 168 episode, whatever this is now, history of this podcast. We have never had a 4 game run like we saw. The last game is less so, but still humorously, the umpires ended up inserting themselves. But where there's just something to talk about the umpires in like a weird or notable or game defining way in each game. And it's like, that's just a bad thing. It's just a really bad thing. It continues to tell stuff about the Brewers. It's, I'm personally having a lot of fun with like clicking on tweets from, bigger national accounts who are aggregating some of these scenes and seeing fans of other teams being like, why is it always the Brewers involved in this? What kind of team are the Brewers? That's a fun development. Hey, if everyone wants to get like that and it becomes, the crew against the world, well, I'm rolling with this crew. I'm rolling with Pat Murphy. Um and to Murph, he showed incredible restraint to not get ejected the day before this instance. I don't even feel like he really went here. Like he possibly went a day later in terms of losing his head. But yeah, at a certain point, you gotta just okay. We gotta take the fine. And we gotta make this one. Gotta make this one count. We gotta do something here. Honestly, with how the series progressed, I don't think it made an impact with this crew. But yeah, not a fun finish to the game anyway because it they weren't robbed, but another umpire could easily have called that differently. I think that's probably the element that factors in there. You could have had another umpire who said, "Yeah, you know what, he did lean in." Um, so yeah, it was a tough way to finish, and only really we might have thought, "Wow, look at all this umpire drama we've had on back-to-back days," and little did we know we were only getting started.
Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Giannis Antetokounmpo for more than 32.5 points and LeBron James for more than 8.5 assists. Download the app today and use code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code BLUEWIRE on the Prize Picks app for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks.
Get ready for the greatest roast of all time, the Roast of Tom Brady, a Netflix live event happening May 5th. Hosted by Kevin Hart, the 7-time world champion gets his cleats held to the fire by famous friends and frenemies on an unforgettable night where everything is fair game. Tune in on May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the Roast of Tom Brady, live only on Netflix.
Yep. Next up in the series, game 2, after all the shenanigans we just discussed, Freddie Peralta on the mound against Tyler Alexander. A score was first for Freddie, and then, as we mentioned earlier, Gary Sanchez at the plate with 2 men on, hits a ground ball, and beats out the throw to first on the fielder's choice, and had to exit due to right hamstring tightness. As you said, Rock giving us some Catcher's Guild vibes, and hoping that Gary Sanchez will just take, today and the off day, and then be back in action. We'll see. So Tyler Black enters the game as a pinch runner to make his MLB debut. Brewers score in that inning on a Willie Adames sac fly that brought home William Contreras. Fun moment in the top of the second. Isaac Paredes leads off the inning, hits a fly ball into the left field corner that would have been a homer, but Golden Retriever energy is back on the menu. Adam, Joey Wiemer robs the homer. Joey Wiemer got a couple of hits in this game as well. Obviously, it's been a tough start to the season for Wiemer as he struggled at the end of last year. Doesn't really have a starting role in this team except occasionally in a game like this, but still fun to watch him go climb the wall in left field. Enjoyed to see that. Bryce Terang adds to the Brewers' lead in the second inning with a single that was scored Jackson Chorio. Then he scores on a sac fly from William Contreras. It's 3-0 after 2 innings. Don't know if you had any thoughts about the early part of that game. If you want me to just keep motoring, Adam, what are you feeling? How do you feel? How you doing?
Where are we at? Have we got? I'm trying to think when Tyler Black's
It's 3-0.
first.
I'm getting to the start of the drama.
Well, the Tyler Black's first hit on his dad is, I guess, one of the nice things.
Yes.
Before we get into everything else, for those who aren't
Talk about
aware,
that because I was at hockey and I had to catch up on it. But before Tyler Black got that hit, Jose Suri, who we'll factor in later, hit a homer to cut it to 3-1.
you
And
better give that piece of information. That's important.
he loved his homer so much, and
Well, he
go
didn't
on.
really. He didn't do a whole lot of anything, and nobody
Chris
cared.
Guccione called
But
it a pretty good homer.
just hilarious. We'll get to that too. What maybe everyone knows by now, or maybe some people cut the clip and don't know the specifics. I certainly didn't know in advance of this. Tyler Black's father, Rod, was the Blue Jays play-by-play commentator while Tyler Black was a kid growing up. Still does play-by-play work across multiple sports. So, the Black family had been in Cancun on vacation. They didn't get really the greatest of, periods of notice to get from Cancun to Milwaukee, but they made it in time for the game. And yeah, Sophia Minard, as she so often does, was in the stands with the family for one of these notable occasions, doing a great interview with his parents. And I think it may seem obvious, but I think a lot of lesser reporters wouldn't have done it. It just was a really incredible touch, which made for a cool moment. Gave Rod the opportunity of like, hey, why don't you do play by play for your son here, which led to him being able to say, that's a hit for my boy, which was just an incredibly heartwarming moment that I think would have gone like ultra viral from this game, if not for all of the other things that happened from this game. I can't remember who it was. The Brewers tweeted the photo of it, but shout out to the Rays player. I'm now thinking, was it Rosario? Was it Caballero? But who handed Tyler Black the ball from his first hit and just kind of like patted him on the butt. That was a cool moment too. Like, so it was all the Tyler Black stuff around this game was incredibly wholesome and quite delightful, including the fact when he was interviewed after the game about what came later. He was like, "Oh, I was already like I was down the back of the dugout and I was kind of like in the tunnel, and I tried to scramble out there to to make sure I was being supportive, and then by the time I got there, everything was finished." So he didn't even have to have his day sullied by being caught up in any of that. So, yeah, look, it's always really exciting to see a notable prospect come up and make their debut, and to see it go as well as it did here, to see the family enjoying it. Like, there are a lot of really cool moments. I know we talked about this at the time, but we were at the home opener last year when Bryce Terang, for example, he hit his grand slam just after like an interview in the same way, Sophie, in the crowd with his parents. I remember us watching that after the game and it being like just incredibly emotional moment. So yeah, I continue to love those interviews with players' parents on their debut. And yeah, that was a pretty cool moment before all of the madness set in.
Yeah, Sophia ends the interview by saying, "Oh, he's got tears in his eyes," and I was like, me too, Sophia, me too." You love a moment like that. Before Tyler Black's first career hit in the fifth inning, Rhys Hoskins had been struck by a pitch, so that put 2 runners on. Willie Adames comes to the plate, homers to center field to make it 6-1 Brewers. Then we get to the top of the sixth, Adam. Jose Caballero strikes out swinging to start the inning. Freddie Peralta goes 3-0 to Jose Siri. 2 of those pitches, which were in the strike zone, Adam. I don't know if you and I got a chance to discuss that, but just calling it like I see it. Freddie Peralta hits Jose Siri with it.
Honestly, you could have called 3 strikes. 2 of them were right in the heart of the strike zone. And the other one could have been called in the corner quite easily. It was the outside corner, but you could get it at times.
So Peralta then, with the 4th pitch of the at-bat, hits Jose Siri in the thigh. Umpires convene. Peralta ejected. No warnings had been issued to this point. Freddie's dealing. He's thrown, 60-something pitches. Pat Murphy comes out. It's ejected for the 2nd consecutive night after arguing with Chris Guccione. Freddie, after the game, said, I'm paraphrasing, I wasn't trying to hit him. I'm dealing. I want to pitch deep into this game. Every day there's a conversation in a newspaper or a podcast or probably within that clubhouse about pitching usage and getting the bullpen some breaks when he can. And Freddie's in a game absolutely dealing with a 6-1 lead with goals of getting later into the game. To think that was an intentional hit by pitch takes some real galaxy brain thinking in that scenario. And instead, you rip Freddie Peralta out of a game and eject Pat Murphy again. And you've completely mismanaged the situation, for one thing. And that's only going to make things worse later in the baseball game. It's bad, quote unquote, crisis management because you created a situation out of nothing because you perceived that to be related to Siri's homer in a game where Freddie's mostly shoving it up their asses. Again, where can we apply some common sense to these situations? I'll turn it over to you. Sorry.
It's not just mismanaging the situation, it's misreading the situation. It's not showing any kind of understanding of, okay, who's Freddie Peralta? What kind of pitcher is he? What kind of guy is he? He had never been ejected in his 7 years in the big leagues. Is he 7 years? I feel like he said that, but that sounds wrong. That's a long time. He'd never been ejected in his big league career up to this point. Maybe it was beyond his big league career. Maybe that's what he's referring to. He's not that guy. Okay, the next thing is where was the pitch located? The pitch hit him on the tie, right? Was it wide of the mark? Yes. Was it higher? I mean, I've seen a lot of people note, you can chime in if you think this is wrong, but it's certainly my experience. More often than not, when guys are going to hit someone, it's around the belt and it involves the hitter turning their back into it. You're not looking to hit a guy on the tie. It's just not the kind of height. That is much more typical of, oh, I've just lost that pitch slightly and it's drifted off. It's at a height that's reasonable to have been a competitive pitch. Thirdly, the Pat Murphy of it all, and I guess this comes true later when he goes on to be suspended for 2 games, not just for his on-field conduct, but for his role in Freddie Peralta's hit by pitch. Why is a manager leading 6-1 with a starting pitcher having thrown 66 pitches through 5 1/3, down multiple starters, some long-term injuries, some more recent injuries, with the bullpen being worked really heavily because you don't have many guys who can reliably go out there and give you your 6, certainly not your 6+. Why is he let's make a point here to a team that isn't even a rival over the home run they had in the 3rd inning that none of us care about because we're running away with the game here? It makes no sense. 0 sense. It's completely illogical. There is no part of the decision that was grounded in logic. Chris Guccione saw something, made up, completely fabricated a narrative in his own brain and went off on his own little fantasy and frankly acted completely drunk on power from then on. Shall we hear more from Chris Guccione? Because I can give you his comments for the pool report if we're gonna just keep pool reporting this thing out.
Bro, I can't. I just gotta say before you get into this, I cannot wait to fire up MLB The Show after this and do my road to the show with Chris Guccione. It's gonna be so lit.
Okay. What was the process that led to Freddie Peralta getting ejected? Chris Guccione replies. So, Siri hit a home run, a pretty good home run. Well, that doesn't matter. He hit a home run in the top of the third, and it was a first pitch home run. So, okay, he ran the bases, whatever. And nothing was really said that we noticed. Then you go to the sixth inning, a trio count, and the pitch that hit Siri went right at him. You put what happened previously in the game together, and we get together as a crew, and we discuss all the events, and we determine as a crew that Peralta was intentionally throwing at Siri. And with that comes an ejection. That's really the process. Was there anything notable between Siri and Peralta as Siri rounded the bases after his home run? I didn't see anything. I don't think the crew saw anything. We haven't really digested the video yet. There's so much stuff that goes on the field, and once we digest the video and do all that, then was there anything in the two other hit by pitches in the game that struck you? No, those were breaking balls. There was no intent there that I felt or we felt as a crew. There was no intent anywhere there. And to be clear, there were no warnings issued. No warnings, no. Understanding that it is the umpire's discretion to eject the pitcher, even if there are no previous warnings issued, can you clarify your thinking on that scenario? There are three options. You can do nothing, you can warn, and you can eject. Those are our three options. In this situation, where we got together as a crew and determined that it was intentional, our only option is to eject in this situation. If there is a situation where you think that warnings are going to be sufficient, then you can issue warnings, yeah. You can do one of those three things. Okay, that's end quote. That's enough from Chris Guccione. I have two things here. How does he get to the place where he thinks it's an intentional hit by pitch when he first says that really nothing happened when Siri ran the bases after the homer, then says he didn't see anything, none of the crew saw anything between Freddie and him? How do you get to that point? I don't know. It just, there's no real logic to it. Secondly, to list off, there are three options, one of which is you could do nothing, you can warn, you can eject. Those are the three options. Once we determined it was intentional, our only option to eject is to eject in this situation. No, it's not. You can warn him. You just said it. Like, guys get warned all the time for hit by pitches that are, like, more obviously intentional than this. It's insane. Insane. And as, like, we'll get onto the rest of it in a moment too, but to your point, he just completes an absolute, like, combustible situation within the stadium, on the field, in the stands. He loses control of the game to a degree because he didn't apply logic in the first place. This game finishes with no incidents, with no ejections, no suspensions coming out of it if he applies basic logic to this situation. And instead, we come out of it with Freddie Peralta suspended for 5 days. And as yet, we won't spoil it, Andrew, in case people don't know yet. And as yet to be named reliever, picking up a 6-day suspension, and Pat Murphy picking up a 2-day suspension. All because Chris Guccione just, like, made up a story in his own head and ran with it. Completely wild. I know we've talked about all kinds of umpiring stuff. We talked about in the last series and stuff which, little did we know. We thought then that was bad and egregious. I don't know. In some ways, at least, it's, like, more grounded in a reality than this. It's just so strange. And what I really want coming out the other side of it is, oh, great, all those suspensions. What happens to this crew? They're just on to the next city to do this again? Like, where is the accountability for stuff like this? Because this just makes no sense.
Where was I going to go with this? Oh, so first of all, this is like, Adam, if you and I have a disagreement and I say we can ignore it, or we've got three options. We can ignore it, we can talk about it, and then instead I just cut your throat immediately. That is the line of logic that Chris Guccione used there. Second of all, uh, the Rays have an analyst named Brian Anderson.
Yes, they do.
And obviously the Brewers lead broadcaster when he's not working. One of the other numerous events that he's working is Brian Anderson. Jeff Levering was doing this game. I'm almost certain though. Because I have a friend who not a fan of either of these teams. I think he might have had some financial implications on this game, and it's why it raised the kerfuffle with him. But he was talking about the ejection, how ridiculous it is, and he's like, I can't keep listening to Brian Anderson say it was clear that it was intentional. And I was like, I don't even think BA is there. And why would he say that? And then I finally put two and two together. And the Rays, Brian Anderson, who I think is a former player, pitcher, if I'm remembering correctly, but I'll fact check that later. An absolute embarrassment to calling baseball games. We love homers. We love when our announcers are homers. And I think there are times when every broadcast crew veers into that. But this guy is an absolute lunatic. Before the game, and this was from a tweet I saw, so I don't know if this quote is exactly accurate, but this is Brian Anderson pregame saying, boy, does that make your blood boil. You hit him, and he took his base. You want to come up the ante like that? I want to come out of this effing booth. And that's about something we'll talk about later. What an absolute embarrassment of a human being. And again, did not hear this with my own ears, so I'm slandering based on a quote I've seen on Twitter. But after yesterday and him just
that
going,
can't be real. That can't be real, Andrew. There's no way.
I listen.
I mean,
I don't
it
like
probably
this guy.
is. Does it feel real? No. Like that. What an insane thing to say. Look, we are obviously a Brewers podcast, and we come for this from a Brewers perspective. We want the Brewers to win. I think we would have no problem. Like if Freddie went out to hit him, and
if
he
buzzes
properly,
his tower, I'm fine.
we're
with
just
no warning.
we're just gonna be like, okay, like, yeah, you shouldn't do that, and he's out of there and he's suspended. Yeah, okay, like, it's just that's not what happened at all. It's just not what happened.
With what we're about to talk about, as I go through this game, there's a part of us that has to be like, all right, fair enough with your decision making here. Now you caused it. You caused it by you saw a little match sitting in the corner of the room, and then you just turned over a thing of gasoline in the sixth inning. But we'll get to that. So Siri's on base, he scores as Elvis Peguero has to come in cold through wild pitch, and then Richie Palacios singled him home. So at that point, I think it's 6-2 Brewers. Brewers get it back in the seventh. Joey Ortiz and Jackson Chourio draw walks. Bryce Strang's double makes the lead 8-2. Nice bounce back for Bryce Strang. He had been going through it, I think, for a little bit, and just bounced back with a couple hits in this game, and then a hit today as well. No more runs scored in this baseball game, Adam, but that did not mean there were not fireworks. In the eighth inning, it is top of the eighth. Jose Siri grounds out. Abner Uribe approaches Siri at first base. A little chirping back and forth between both of them. Abner Uribe then swings on Siri. A kerfuffle breaks out. Rhys Hoskins ends up on the ground and then ends up bull rushing Jose Siri. And Siri, as I think Steven put it in the Discord, just backed away so fast from that fight. It was like the Roadrunner. He was getting out of there. He wanted no part of Rhys Hoskins. Rhys Hoskins felt his body, which has gone through a lot of, trauma over the last year.
He knows a thing or two about hit by pitches too.
Yeah, he's got some ball magnet stuff to him that has been going on lately. But he feels himself go down. Like that's a dangerous situation for him to be in, and he sees red and just is charging. We got Quentin Berry, I think, wrapping up Abner to diffuse that situation. A situation all created by the wonderful creative mind of Chris Guccione. Like this man should write screenplays. His imagination is so vivid and it brings things to life.
Should Abner have swung at Jose Siri? No, of course he should. Children, if there are any children listening, anyone who's got like the pot on the car doing the school run, no, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Do I hate to see it? No, I don't at all. I think it's It's not the smartest decision, and that's certainly reflective of something. I think we could see at times in Abner's pitching, but it shows some real heart, some fight. I think it is reflective too of the like for if we wanted to try and unpack in a real way, why do the Brewers keep ending up in these situations like opposing fans keep asking? The answer is simple. It's because it keeps building and building, and then each time something happens, like they are already more irritated on edge than a lot of other teams because they have found themselves in multiple situations that are this combustible. He reacted, he responded. Now, the interesting part of it is like through all this, I mean, Siri ends up with a 2-game suspension. Like, it's that's fair based on his involvement, but also he's the instigator for all of the suspensions.
3 games, right?
Did he get? I thought he got 2.
What
I
I'm looking
really
at says 3.
okay, that's fair enough then.
But he appealed, but he also served one of the games today. So now if they not dock it down to 2, like then he'll just have one more.
Then he'd be about okay.
But who cares? They're going to finish last place in the AL East, so
my
they
point
don't
is
they don't matter. But
my point is he's the instigator in all of it. Like Abner didn't just decide, hey, I'm gonna go and throw a punch at him to try and level things up for Freddie. That's not how it played out. So yeah, just a crazy situation, but just all totally avoidable. And I don't know who's head of umpiring, like MLB, who oversees all of the umps now. But like, there's got to be someone involved in this who's gonna review that game, review how does this situation get here. It's on your crew chief. Like, the thing falls apart because of the decision making he makes, and there's making the right decision, and there's also like sensibly referee. It's like in a lot of other sports, like if it was soccer, like there's a fiery tackle in the first couple of minutes. Do you go straight in and send it off? Do you send someone off? No, you'll be like, okay, here's a yellow card for you, a yellow card for you. Look, we've all had our fun. We've laid down a marker here. That's enough of that. Like it's literally what warnings are for,
my
right?
favorite Saudi league manager would disagree.
I don't know. I don't know what we're doing here. I just hope someone from an MLB perspective looks at that and can take some lessons because it's just tremendous mishandling of the game. Tremendous. Give Freddie a warning, and I just don't think we end up in that place. And I think that would have been harsh, but you say, okay, a warning's a warning. What are you gonna do? Strange situation, strange game. But a Brewers win.
A Brewers win. Hobie Milner comes in, cleans up that inning. Thiago Vieira gets the ninth, closes things down with just a beautiful blue and off-white glove.
Gray,
Looked great.
gray, I think, yeah.
Grayish. I think it was
Maybe it
44.
looked a little less gray the next day. But
Yeah, it might have. I don't. We're gonna have to ask Kevin Cash about that in a minute. I think it was a 44 Pro. I've got one of those sitting over there. Free ad. Sorry, Ty. We'll go to the suspensions now before we get into game 3. So it was 6 games for Abner, 5 for Freddie Peralta, 3 for Siri, and 2 for Pat Murphy. Pat Murphy had to begin serving his suspension immediately, so he was not the manager for today's game. Acting manager Ricky Weeks, baby. We're staring into our future, and we'll see Ricky Weeks hopefully rub Craig Counsell's face in the dirt as they exchange lineups on Friday at Wrigley Field. Oh, Adam, tell me not to go. Tell me not to go.
I already have, but I don't know if you'll listen.
I'm a great listener. That's what all the women I've dated have told me. Up next, the final game in this series, Colin Ray on the hill against Zach Eflin, and another successful day for the Milwaukee Brewers. In the third, with Oliver Dunn and Bryce Ring on base, William Contreras doubles to left to make it 2-0 Brewers. In the sixth, Willie Adames, homer to center, makes it 3-0. Colin Ray dancing in and out of trouble each inning. A hit there, a walk there, but it didn't matter. He would buckle down anytime runners got on base, and he pitched 6 innings, 4 hits, just 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. 99 pitches on the day for Ray. ERA down to
That's the
2.67
big
in his
part.
6 starts.
That 99 pitches. Can you remember Colin Ray getting that close to 100 pitches in his time with the Brewers?
It's not standing out on my mind if he's done it. Like this was like we talk about him, or we've talked about him, and we've begun shifting expectations in the last few weeks. It's 5 and dive, and like he just looked like a starting pitcher that's going to go out and give you a bulk today, and that was fantastic.
He finished that fifth inning on what, like 84, 85 pitches, and in my head I was like, okay, that's him done.
I thought he was
done.
done. Yeah.
So is that a Ricky Weeks difference to Pat Murphy? Maybe Murph is not sending too many guys out there to get that close to 100, although it's kind of needs must, and maybe even more so when you're looking at being out without Abner Uribe, and possibly missing a Freddie Peralta start or having it delayed, depending on how appeals go. But
Yeah, this season it seems like
took him out of 5.
Like right below 90 seems like his sweet spot for this year. 84, 81, 87, 89, 86. So this is definitely like another level up, another tool in the bag if you say like, all right, go eat, big dog, because I know they got the off day tomorrow, but hey, it's all, like we say, it's all banked, right, Adam? Like that was a good start for Colin Ray. I was, getting on the end of last week's podcast, I was like, I kind of praised a mediocre out, or kind of a poor to mediocre outing a little too much. I think, do I love Colin Ray too much? And this is not doing good things for me, tempering my Colin Ray love, because we love the story. He's a guy you want to root for. You're out of Major League Baseball, you come back and you're in your early 30s, which is totally reasonable age to be, and doesn't mean that you're washed up or anything. not speaking for the two of us or anything. Colin Ray going out and doing it for the millennials.
I mean, it's also the kind of stuff that if you weren't a Brewers fan, if you're a Cubs fan or a Cardinals fan, we don't have to do it anymore, but we were complaining about Cardinals, voodoo magic. That's certainly the season before last. If you're a fan of another NL Central team and you're looking at a series like this, and Bryce Wilson goes out and gives you 6 innings with 1 earned run, and Colin Ray goes out and gives 6 innings with 0 earned runs, you're the Jesse Breaking Bad gif of you can't they can't just keep getting away with this, but the Brewers do, and yeah, Colin Ray is awesome. No losses yet on his record too, and he's getting decisions. It's all wins. So if you keep Colin Ray in a game, good things are happening. Very impressive.
So Colin Ray leaves the game, and then they get him one more run in the bottom of the 6th. Excuse me, on that Willy Adames solo homer. Brian Hudson throws a scoreless 7th. Erasmo Ramirez comes on for the Rays in the 7th. Oliver Dunn single to right. Blake Perkins follows that with a double off the top of the wall in left to score Dunn. Makes it 4-0. After Sal Frelick flyout and a William Contreras walk, Willy Adames hits his 2nd homer of the game, 3rd of the series, to make it 7-0. Abner Uribe comes on in the 8th. Excuse me. Obviously, the team trying to use him today before he starts his mini vacation, and didn't go well for Abner. Richie Palacios single starts the inning. He then walks Randy Arozarena. Ahmad Rosario, fielder's choice, puts runners on 2nd and 3rd, I believe, or 1st and 3rd. Palacios scores on a wild pitch then to make it 7-1. Walks Austin Shenton. Nico Goodrum grounds into a fielder's choice to make it, or to not score any runs, sorry. And then a Jose Caballero ground out ends the inning. So gets out of it with only allowing 1, makes it 7-1 there. Nothing doing for the Brewers in the 8th. And then Thiago Vieira in the 9th, starts the inning, or before he can start the inning, the umpires confiscate his glove, which was the blue and gray one that we discussed earlier. And I think the broadcast booth was intimating that it seemed like it came from Kevin Cash. He was a little concerned that the color of the gray part of the glove looked too much like a baseball. And his team was down 7-1. I want to reiterate at this point, they give Thiago a glorious, glorious neon yellow glove afterwards to use instead. He goes fly out, ground out to end the inning. Really glad that they made the glove switch so that the Rays hitters were able to see the ball better. Like, just breaks my heart for this absolutely joke of a franchise that's now 14-18 and plays in a shopping mall Vegas casino with no outside light. It makes you feel like you're trapped in like that John Cusack movie where you're just stuck in the room and you can't get out.
Or that U2 song.
Or
At
that
a
U2 song.
moment. Yeah. Uh, I just one thing. This is not like. Was I listening to what you said? Of course, I'm always listening to what you said. But one thing jumped out to me there. I started to think about because I was thinking of bullpen usage, and obviously you're going to be without Abner Uribe. Can you remember the last time UL Piamps pitched?
Um, was it Friday of the Yankee series?
It wasn't. He last pitched on Thursday against the Pirates, which means he will have had a full week off. By the time he gets a chance to pitch again, it's a long time.
So get him anything on Friday. Like no matter the state of that game, he needs an inning.
Probably could have got him an inning today, though. I mean, I was only thinking because
Yeah.
I was like Brian Hudson going back out there again, and Brian Hudson's been incredible.
Piamps was loosening at one point with the middle of the order coming up in the eighth, and then they, I guess, went back to Hudson for another.
Just interesting. Again, we've talked bullpen usage, and obviously they do have a squeeze there. I mean, they have had some things help. Obviously, we mentioned Haas being around the clubhouse.
Oh no, wait, that was Abner. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Haas being around the clubhouse, but not actually, there being a corresponding roster move for him. Koenig was also around the clubhouse today, so I'm gonna guess we see him back in the mix, and he's obviously pitched very well. But yeah, just interesting. No harm, but getting to the point where it might do some harm because it's quite a long time off.
I would suggest be up like 6-0 against the Cubs going into the ninth and then let him close that one down. That's my suggestion for Friday.
Listen, I'm not gonna push back against that particular suggestion.
Taking 2 out of 3 from the Rays, a team scuffling, a team that's gonna finish last in the AL East, a team that has, seen this little bit of success go to their heads, and now they're gonna have to pay the piper. I don't know why I'm going in on the Rays so much. That is what happens when you win a series and you're annoyed by the umpires. You just take it out on everything.
I know where you're going in on the Rays, but we can talk about that offline.
All right. You want to hand out some beers, Adam?
Let's do it. I want to give you one stat just from this series that maybe we should factor in to how many beers a certain player gets. I saw a tweet from Mike Vassallo, Senior Director of Media Relations with the Brewers, that Willie Adames is the first Brewers player since Tyler Saladino in 2019 with consecutive games of 4+ RBI. Should we be considering 2 beers for Mr. Willie Adames with just 2 home runs in the final game of this series too?
Yeah, I think we should. That's a good shout out. Samsung Lions legend Tyler Saladino, for anyone that checked in on KBO during COVID. I've got a Samsung Lions hat somewhere in this room. I promise I'm very normal and I have other hobbies besides baseball, even though it doesn't seem like that.
People who listen to this podcast know you are not very normal and that you do not really have other hobbies besides baseball.
That's true. But that's fine.
Yeah, you feign interest in other hobbies. I mean, maybe you're trying to develop some other hobbies, as people might hear on another podcast we do soon.
Tune in to make time for this for a therapy exercise with Andrew and Adam, mostly about me. I'm the one being psychoanalyzed here.
I'm gonna plug this episode just because people may be invested in you who listen to this podcast. They may want to know more about one of their favorite podcasters, Andrew Snyder. We're gonna talk about the movie Challengers on Make Time for This, our movie podcast. Andrew has kind of teased that he may have some personal revelations to reveal to me. So if you want to know more too about Andrew Snyder, check out Make Time for This.
Before we get into all that, let's hand out some beers. As you just heard, Willie Adames gets a pair of beers. Bryce Wilson gets a beer. Freddie Peralta gets a beer. Would we normally give Freddie Peralta a beer? We're going just 5 and a third innings? No, but the umpires ripped away 8 innings and 1 run ball of Freddie Peralta from us. At least 7. It would have been one of those 2. Freddie gets a beer for just the grave injustice committed by Chris Cuccione and friends. Colin Ray gets a beer. Brian Hudson, another beer. Thiago Vieira, a beer. Trevor McGill, a beer. Elvis Peguero, a beer. Hobie Milner, a beer. William Contreras, a beer. Reese Hoskins, Bryce Strang, Joey Weimer, Tyler Black, and Oliver Dunn. Leaderboard through 30 games. William Contreras with 11. Willie Adames with 9. Bryce Strang with 8. Brian Hudson with 7. Abner Uribe and Joey Ortiz with 6. Christian Yelich, Joel Pimps, Colin Ray, Elvis Peguero, Reese Hoskins with 5. Jackson Torrio, Bryce Wilson, Freddie Peralta, Thiago Vieira, Hobie Milner with 4. Sal Frelick, Blake Perkins, Joe Ross, Trevor McGill, Oliver Dunn with 3. Gary Sanchez, Jake Bowers, Jared Koenig, Joey Weimer with 2. JB Bukowskis, Owen Miller, Tobias Myers, and Tyler Black with a single beer. That is through 30 games for your 19-11 Milwaukee Brewers. And Adam, are you ready? You ready to talk about it?
I mean, not really. We don't have much to say now, but we'll be talking a whole lot about it on the next episode.
The Milwaukee Brewers will head to Wrigley Field this weekend for 3 games against the Chicago Cubs. The second place Chicago Cubs, by what margin we will know later today. Craig Counsell manages there now. I think someone at ESPN put out an article about like what does it look like when a manager swaps sides of a rivalry. I haven't got the chance to read that yet. I will. If it's some sort of fluff piece about Craig, I'll report back on the next episode with the proper amount of rage. Friday, May 3rd, after the off day tomorrow, or today as you listen to this, 1:20 Central start. Joe Ross takes the mound against Hayden Wesneski. Saturday, 1:20 Central start. Tobias Myers against Jameson Taillon. And then Sunday, 1:20 Central start. Bryce Wilson against Javier Assad. Then they'll head to Kansas City before returning home to face the Cardinals. But yeah, big series on tap for the extracurricular activities part of it, with Craig being on the other side. And because the Cubs have played pretty well this season. So good measuring stick for both teams. And both teams will want to be the team that kind of sets the pace in this very, very, very early stages of the Major League Baseball season as we find ourselves fully in May. Started this journey at the end of March, and now we're into May.
I do want to quibble with the schedule you've outlined there for one reason. And that is the Kurt Hogue tweeted after the final game of the Rays series. Freddie Peralta said the hope with appealing his suspension is that he will still be able to pitch on schedule Sunday in Chicago.
Okay.
He could serve the suspension after that and then come back as part of a 6-man rotation.
That's even better. I love that.
Yeah, that is mixing things up a little, but I like the idea of Craig having to face Freddie. So let's hope that gets reduced and we can see Freddie go up against the Cubs in that series finale. You know, fresh to us before we podcast.
That was very worth getting Schlesinger, Adam. So I'd take no issue with your quibble there.
All right. That does it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. That's Cruising for Brewsing to never miss an episode. In particular, the next episode against about the Brewers against Craig Counsell. You may also want to check out the Eurostep Podcast Network, the main feed here at GSPN, home to all things Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks are alive. Maybe just about, but they are alive. Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis kept the show on the road. Big win against the Pacers. 3-2. Could Giannis be back? Could Dame be back? Could they get this to a Game 7? Time will tell. Either way, we'll have it all covered over on the Eurostep Podcast Network. For all things Green Bay Packers and continued reaction to their draft, Talking to Tundra is the place to go. And for Andrew to reveal, I don't know what yet, and maybe that makes me a little bit nervous about his personal life, check out Make Time for This for more from Andrew and I as we talk movies. Until next time, thanks again to all of you for listening. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Adam.